Welcome to Build. I'm Laura Haywood, and I'm joined today by a superb and incredibly prolific actor. David Morse has so many theater, television, and film credits that if I listed them all, it would take the entire time we're allotted. So I'll just give you a few highlights. On-screen highlights include Contact, The Green Mile, 12 Monkeys, Concussion, Disturbia, House, St. Elsewhere, and HBO's John Adams. On stage, he starred in Paula Vogel's Pulitzer-winning How I Learned to Drive, as well as Connor McPherson's The Seafarer. He's currently starring alongside Denzel Washington in The Iceman Cometh on Broadway as the intensely brooding former anarchist Larry Slade, and I can't wait to dig into this meaty role and incredible production with him. I'm so thrilled to welcome David Morse.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. You know, Eugene O'Neill is a little bit intimidating. The show is long, and I think that it can be like there can be a big inhale before going in, like, I'm ready to do this. And then this production, it's so brilliantly acted, incredibly directed, and has such subtle nuance that, to me, the time went by in a snap. And I was very pleasantly surprised by how engaged I was for that entire 4-hour chunk of time.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't really realize about the play, it was one of the last plays that he wrote. He was writing Long Day's Journey to Night. It was driving him insane, writing it, and his wife, you know, said, why don't you just take a break from writing that and do something nice and light? So he wrote Iceman Cometh.
This is the light one?
This was his light one.
Yeah. I thought maybe you were going to say that he went and started hanging out with his buddies at a bar.
I think he did plenty of that.
Right. This is a story about a bunch of people hanging out at a bar, sort of a bar / boarding house / maybe it's a little bit of a brothel. I don't know.
No business in the bar. It all takes place
So
elsewhere.
the ladies of the night take rooms there, but don't actually conduct their business.
That's right. Ladies of the pavement.
Right. I like how they're like, we're not whores, we're tarts. As if that's any better.
Pretty sweet. They're
anyway,
really sweet.
But you have one of the few roles that is both on stage and awake for the entire 4 hours of the show. A lot of these guys, these bar buddies, sleep on the tables. But Larry Slade is awake and very intently observing everything that happens throughout the entire time.
Yeah, well, Larry is somebody who came there from the outside. He came. You know, this is the world. If you haven't read or seen Iceman, it's really, he describes these people as with nowhere else to go. They come to the end of the line, and this is it. And they've made a nice world for themselves there, and they have their dreams, and they've really created a world that he has come to embrace. He's running from something and comes into this world, and he is actually sort of the Eugene O'Neill character, and O'Neill. Found that it was based on a real bar down in this part of the city, and it's really about his experience as a younger man discovering this world and these people, and he had such a fondness and love for them, unexpected. I don't think he expected it, but really came to adore these people, and it's what my character feels about this world and these people. He is the outsider, but he really feels at home with them at the same time.
Is this your first time performing this play?
Well, I actually did the Schubert Theater up in Boston. They were doing these stage reading, you know, significantly staged readings. They had a series up there where they're doing. So I did Iceman Cometh. They asked me to do Hickey, and I went up there and we rehearsed for 2 days. And I went up and I had some reading glasses that I bought for this special, you know, reading. And the director also decided, I don't know if you know, but Hickey makes kind of a late entrance in the play.
This is the Denzel Washington character.
Yeah, and the full-length play, ours is cut, ours is 4 hour, but the full-length play, which is a 5-hour experience, he doesn't even come on stage for an hour and 15 minutes into the play. Denzel comes in way earlier than that in our version of the play. But the director wanted us all to sit on stage. So I sat on the stage for an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
With watching everybody, with my energy just going through the floor. And I got up there, and as soon as I made my entrance, my reading glasses broke. And for the next 4 hours, of 3.5 hours, I had to balance them on my nose while I'm trying to do this reading. It was not the ideal experience of doing Iceman Cometh, so I get to do this one, which is a little more pleasant.
So having played both Hickey in that situation and playing Slade here, do you find them to be flip sides of the same coin? Because I had that thought as I was watching them. I felt like they're both reacting to a lot of negativity around them, and Slade has gone inward, and Hickey has like gone out. And I felt like there was this kind of dance between the two.
Yeah, well, that's true. I guess that would be the nature of their personalities. Larry is the observer, hiding. You know, as like I said, he's really hiding from a past and denying his past. And Hickey is really doing the same thing. His more recent past, he is kind of in denial of. But he is the life of the party. He is what we're all waiting for and dying for, you know, to have him show up and cheer us all up and tell us jokes and get drunk and just party for 2 weeks.
And
get
then he
blasted
shows
for 2
up
weeks.
and he's sober. What?
Good golly.
Ugh. So I actually thought, this was my first experience with the Iceman Cometh.
Yeah.
And I thought I thought Hickey was the Iceman, because I knew he came in late, and I
Right.
thought we're waiting for him to
Right.
show up. The Iceman
Right.
Cometh, sort of like a waiting for Godot situation.
Right.
But the Iceman does not make an appearance in the show. Can you explain what the Iceman means?
Well, apparently, I was told this the other day. It's a joke. It's a little off-color joke that Hickey comes in and he makes with the bar. And every time he comes and tells this joke. And I'm not sure I can tell the joke.
You
but
can.
I can.
If you're uncomfortable, I'll tell it.
You go ahead and tell it.
Well, the way I understand is he's always saying that his wife's cheating on him with the Iceman.
Right.
Is it? And you know, like the word cometh
well,
has multiple meanings.
Well,
we
I
can
guess the joke
but-
is the husband yells up or said, "Has the Iceman come yet?" And the wife says, "No, but he's breathing hard." So
Got it. Well, okay, I didn't know the joke in that many details, but I knew
Okay.
the idea was basically like when's the other man going to show up, or when's the shit going to hit the fan, sort of thing. And that's what the reference is.
So it's just he has this joke he tells us whenever he comes. We all think it's funny, but this time it has taken on a new kind of meaning, a really new kind of meaning, because something has happened in his world. Something has happened to his wife. He doesn't want to tell us. I drag it out of him. I force it out of him, and at the same time he's going after me. But it's like you say, a metaphorical kind of meaning.
Sure. The cast, I love that the whole cast is featured here in this photograph, because what an ensemble. One of the reviews that I read said there's this movement right now to get ensembles recognized by the Tony Awards.
That'd be great.
It won't happen this year, but there's a petition out, and one of the reviews led with, there is no greater argument for why that award should exist than the ensemble of the Iceman Cometh, and I'm so happy we have a picture of all of them there.
Yeah, it is truly some of the great actors in this city, in this country, you know, working on this stage. It's great group to be with.
So many are name actors, whether it's Reg Rogers, Bill Irwin, Michael Potts. I mean, it's
Cole
like
Meany.
it's like a who's who of the best actors of our time, and it's really so.
And I get to
wonderful
watch them
see
all.
Yeah, you're on stage that whole time.
I get to see it all, and it's beautiful work. It's
I actually
fun to
don't
be
know
there.
which would be harder, trying to be asleep or trying to stay awake on that stage. You know, I was watching these guys lying there, shifting subtly in their sleep, and wondering how hard that would be to do.
Well, I'm very
for all those
self-conscious because I
hours.
start the play, and I know they're all lying there listening to everything I say. And all these wonderful actors there going, I think I would say it a little differently.
No.
I think I could do it better than that.
Well, I was watching you very intently because I knew this interview was coming up, and I think a lot of people in that theater were like waiting for Denzel. They were like, "When's Denzel cometh?" But I was like watching you so intently, maybe the way that some of those actors are listening to you. And I highly recommend anyone who sees this show spend those first 40 minutes before Denzel comes onto the stage watching David Morse, because your performance is just so electric.
Thanks. I recommend you watch a few other people, but
I
that's
can-
nice of you to say that.
Sure. I mean, look, I was the only person who let out a just like incredibly loud guffaw when Bill Irwin referenced the fact that his character used to work in the circus. And knowing Bill's history as an actor, I was like, ha! And everyone around me turned to look. So I certainly was paying attention to other people too, but there's plenty to watch before Denzel.
Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of, I know you and he worked together on St. Elsewhere famously, but I understand you hadn't seen each other in 30 years until rehearsals for this show.
We actually saw each other once. Denzel has no memory of it at all, which doesn't make me feel very good. But
Aw.
but we actually saw each other once on a plane. We were flying from New York to L.A. and we talked for a little bit on the plane. Not that that's particularly memorable. But we had not seen each other in 30 years, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't, he obviously, his journey through this world in the past 30 years has been quite an extraordinary journey. So I didn't know what to expect.
And then on the first day he showed up at rehearsal, what happened?
Yeah, I actually, because I was shooting something, I couldn't get there for the first 3 days of rehearsal. I wasn't there when everybody meets. And so I was just in the room with 3 other actors, and we were kind of reading stuff. And there's a great big room, and all of a sudden the door bursts open, and Denzel comes striding through, comes right across the rehearsal room, gives me a great big hug, and it was great. It couldn't have been a better way to begin things.
So you guys are back together again.
Yeah.
After all
with
this
a little
time.
history. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think about those days back on St. Elsewhere? I mean, that was a show that really changed television.
Oh, it really, that and Hill Street Blues.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you saw those shows, but neither of us wanted to do television at that time. He had starred in a movie called Carbon Copy, and I starred in a movie called Inside Moves. And neither of those movies had particular success. Inside Moves, I will say, has a lot of people have called it one of their favorite films ever, thanks to video and all of that. I'm not sure Carbon Copy had the same kind of, no offense to him, but anyway, our movies didn't do well, and we both wound up on this series, St. Elsewhere, both thinking we were going to work for 13 episodes, the show was going to fail, we're going to come back to New York, do plays, and make a little money. And we wound up doing it for the next 6 years and being a part of a show that changed, like you say, helped change television. So it really was something extraordinary.
Now, you have been in so many guest starring roles and series regulars on television shows, in so many movies. I think it's almost 100 credits in film and television combined. What do you get recognized for the most?
Amazingly, St. Elsewhere is still a big one. And even from younger people who watched it with their parents. Green Mile is huge. I mean, lots of people know the Green Mile. I'm always pleased when other things, like Sean Penn, I did a couple of movies that Sean directed, with Jack Nicholson and Viggo Mortensen in Sean's very first movie. So I love it when people recognize me from those things, because those have so much meaning to all of us, and Sean in particular, but really all of us. But those, Green Mile and St. Elsewhere are big ones.
Do people ever think, I know you from somewhere and I can't quite place it? I feel like you, and I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but I feel like you're one of those people who it's like, oh, he's that one guy, he's that guy. And they don't quite, because you've been in so many things and you're kind of this relatable everyman. Even when you're the bad guy, you're kind of like the relatable everyman.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was, I mean, you said this earlier, earlier in your career, well, on St. Elsewhere, there was a lot of recognition. Then you go through a period where it's like, did you play basketball with me, or did you teach at my school, or did we go to high school together? And then it becomes, oh, you're the actor. They don't really know my name. You're the actor. Among thousands of actors, I'm the actor.
But you've had so many roles, and I think that's what makes it a compliment, is that they know you in all these kind of different ways that don't all go together, because they're all different people.
That's right. And things like, playing George Washington and John Adams, which is a lot of makeup, and when they realize that, it's, oh my God, you were George Washington, it's kind of special, but it's a lot of it, like in Concussion, playing Mike Webster, who was was the center for the Steelers. Again, it was a lot of prosthetics.
Is it true you gained 30 pounds for that role?
25 pounds.
Okay, so my research was a little bit off. That's still pretty remarkable.
When I did Crossing Guard with Sean, I put on 25 pounds of muscle. At that time, I was 40 years old. when I did Concussion, I was 60 years old, and putting on 25 pounds is a whole different thing.
My question is, how do you take it off when you're done?
Yeah, that was the problem.
Yeah. Well, you've done it.
Yeah.
You look great.
Yeah, well, thanks.
What's your favorite moment in this show, in Iceman?
I don't know if I could say, there are moments I'd love to watch, just because they're just beautiful. And they can be tiny things. They can be, some of the tarts,
Oh,
some
they're
of
so fantastic.
They are. They're so lovely. They're the guy who plays Willie, Neil Huff, who just is such a dear guy, and his character is so dear. And just in that third act, when he does his suit on, and when he comes in, and the way he's walking and trying so hard to go out and face the world, it just touches my heart to see him do that.
Can we talk about the set a little bit? Because I know that this play takes place in one place,
Yeah.
but every act, that set looks different. What do
Yeah.
you make of that?
Well, I think most of the time when you see the play, it's all done on one set. It's always just the bar, and everything happens in that bar. Well, George wanted to do something different with this, because there's 4 acts. He wanted to have a different experience with each of the acts. So the first act actually begins in the back, way back of the bar, which is not. There's the front part where all the business happens, the waterfront workers, the market people, they all come in there, they have lunch there, all of that. But in way back, which is where we begin the play and everybody's asleep, we move from there kind of as the party for Harry. We move more towards the front of the bar. The third act, we get to the front of the bar with the doors, where now Hickey is forcing them out of the bar. So we're really experiencing them having to leave. And then the fourth act is kind of more.
It's like symbolic.
It is symbolic.
I didn't realize that the first act took place in the back of the bar.
Yeah.
I thought that the set was getting more and more realistic as the acts went by, and so realizing that was a back room clarifies a little bit for me. But that in Act 3, when there's this big, beautiful bar that is so realistic, I just wanted to go pull a pint,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we actually had. In previews, George has been messing with this. We actually had the doors, we had the wall, they were much more realistic. And he started stripping things away because he didn't want the experience to be so literal. It's gotten simpler and more abstract as we've gone along.
I wish that I'd had a chance to see the very first preview, especially knowing what I know about George C. Wolfe as a director and the legendary stories about how Shuffle Along made its changes over the course of its previews. But what you guys have landed on is pretty spectacular. In fact, I'm going to do something that I've never done on this stage before, which is I'm going to read some of the notes that I took live during the show. I was so mesmerized that some of my notes ended up kind of reading like poetry, and I feel like they're worth visiting with the audience, specifically about your character. I wrote, he has this sadness, he's resigned. He drinks, but he isn't a drunk. He's depressed, observing, waiting for the end, observed but isn't invested, the only one with no more pipe dreams. He speaks slower than the rest, is less affected, almost like a narrator, the voice of reason, like he has more perspective, knows what's coming. He's prescient, measured, unprovoked, solitary, and introverted. Drowned and contented at the bottom of a bottle is a line I wrote down. And that's a direct line, right?
That's what I say, yeah.
I feel like that really sums him up. He is both happy and drowning, or already drowned.
Boy, that's for sure. Yeah, he's like I said, he's a poet. He's a fighter for the people. He desperately wants to numb himself and can't do it. It's one of the things that George and I talked about. Everybody there really are alcoholics, and he is trying desperately to be an alcoholic, and it's not working. He calls himself a bum. He wants to be a bum. He wants to disappear on the street. It's not happening for him, and he's kind of romanticized this world, and I love doing it. I actually, when I was asked to do it, I don't know if you read this, but when I was first asked to do it, I read the role. I thought, I'm not sure want to do it. I'm not sure I get it. I'm not sure I see the thing there, that I really should, why I should be doing this role. And the people who represent me said, read it again, read it again. Just please read it again. And I read it again, and what you're talking about started hitting me in the head. And there it was. I got it. I got who Larry Slade was, and thank God I got it, because this is really a remarkable play.
It's a remarkable performance as well. And that metaphor that you mentioned when we first sat down about being awake while everyone else is asleep, that's what I see Larry doing is in trying to become an alcoholic. He wants that escape that these other bums have gotten by becoming resigned to the idea of sitting in this bar every single day. And you're waiting for, it makes me think of like Cat in a Hot Tin Roof. There's that line about like drinking until the click happens and he can finally escape. And so many other just another theater parallel that I kept making is I just seen the revival of Carousel, which I don't know whether you saw it, but it was written right around the same time as Iceman, and Billy Bigelow strikes me as so similar to Hickey, and my brain was going, like my theater brain was going in all sorts of different ways, and I was just like mesmerized and inspired and like heartbroken and beaming all at the same time. And if that's not an endorsement of a show, I don't know what is.
Really?
Yeah.
You're lucky you get to see all these things and have those kind of experiences.
Yeah. It's not lost on me how lucky I am to get to immerse myself like this.
Yeah.
We have some microphones out in the audience. I'd love to invite people to ask you some questions.
Sure.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming. We love having you.
Thank you.
You're phenomenal. Out of all the things you've done between film, stage, directing, producing, what is your favorite, or what would you prefer?
I'm sorry, how?
I stutter, so
Sorry.
bear with me.
Right.
Out of all the things that you've done, film, stage, TV, producing, directing, which is your favorite, or which do you prefer?
Well, I don't get to do stage very often. I started on the stage at 17 years old, younger than that really, but my first professional job was doing repertory theater, which I don't know if that means anything to you, but I did 6 years of repertory theater, and I love being on the stage. And once I had a family, that becomes more complicated. And living in Los Angeles, or having children, it's not easy to say leave your children for 6 months. That's what you have to do if you want to do a play, commit to something. So I went 10 years without doing a play between Seafarer and How I Learned to Drive, and that was the longest I'd ever gone. So I'm very grateful when I get to come be on the stage again and work with people. It's a really a unique experience because of the audience, because of people like you. Getting to be there and share that, and you get to do it night after night. It's fantastic.
I hope it's not another 10 years after this one.
I'm kind of hoping the same thing. Yeah.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Who else has a question?
Hi, thanks for being here. How does it feel to be nominated for another Drama Desk Award?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. You were nominated for a Drama Desk.
Yeah, and apparently the Outer Critics Circle thing too.
That's right.
Not that I'm just throwing things around like that, but I actually had a couple of feelings. I want everybody on our show to be nominated. I love working with these people, and I love all the work they're doing. So I'm honored. I really am honored to get nominated. But at the same time, I want to see everybody get nominated that I get to work with. So it's an honor for sure, and I'm glad of it.
And we are abiding by the superstition of not mentioning award shows that have not been, the nominations have not been announced yet.
Yeah.
I will say that I think that things are boding well, and I have faith that you're going to have you in this show are going to have a very happy next few weeks.
We'll see. I'm glad you feel that way. But we'll see. We're doing our show and enjoying it.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, David.
Hey.
Hey, big fan. You've answered my question, so plan B. When you kind of look at all the different characters you played on film, TV, and on the theatre, is there any specific character that stands out or was very challenging from a kind of complexity standpoint?
I'm going to sort of give you a little different answer to that. Because I've played people like George Washington and Mike Webster, people who are real people. There's a kind of challenge that goes along with that, a responsibility in a way, because Washington is just such an iconic figure for all of us, and there's so much weight to people's expectations for that character, or Mike Webster, who was so loved in Pittsburgh and still so loved, so alive for that city. He meant so much to that city. So there's a kind of responsibility that happens with that, and I've loved doing that. But there are other things like I mentioned. The crossing guard that Sean Penn wrote and directed. He included me when we were doing Indian Runner. He came to my trailer one day while we were shooting, and he had written a scene and said, "What do you think of the scene? Do you like the scene?" And I read it. I said, "Really cool scene." He said, "What are you going to do with it?" He said, "I don't know." And then he wrote some more scenes. And so over the course of the next 4 years, really, he wrote that, and I got to participate in creating that character and be involved through the whole process of it and the editing and everything. So that had, I loved that character. I loved that movie. And part of it is I just lived with it for so long, and I was so, personally, emotionally invested in it. And then there were other characters like The Green Mile, which was a great character among great characters. All those actors in that film were fantastic, and it was just a beautiful story. So there's a lot of roles that have meaning for different reasons. So to pick out one is kind of hard. Yeah.
We're just about out of time, but I know that you've just wrapped a project with Ben Stiller. Can you give us a couple of sentences about that?
Sure. Escape at Dannemora. Maybe some of you know there was a prison escape that happened upstate New York a few years ago, and these guys were on the run for, I don't know, a couple of weeks or whatever it was, and the governor was involved. It was really a big thing here in New York. So Showtime has done a series, 8-part series, and Ben Stiller directs all 8 episodes and is producing things. It's a Herculean task. Benicio del Toro, Patricia Arquette, Paul Dano.
So no one we've ever heard of.
No one you've heard of.
When can we expect to see that? Do you know?
I don't know. They haven't announced it yet. I'm going to guess next fall, maybe.
Okay, great. And in the meantime, we can all go to the Jacobs Theater and see you in The Iceman Cometh. You're really, I can't say enough how much I admire you, and how I just encourage everyone to get tickets to Iceman Cometh and go for Denzel, but stay for David Morse.
Oh, nice. Thank you very much. Nice
You're
to be
welcome.
here.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you all. Thanks.